Hello everyone, my name is Barry Lacey and I'm the historian in residence with Wexford County Council's Library and Archive Service as part of their Decade of Centenaries. And today's talk is going to be entitled The Resources for the Revolutionary Period in County Wexford. So today we're going to be looking at a wide variety of resources which you can use yourself for studying the Revolutionary period. This will be primarily for this talk, the 1916 Rising, the War of Independence and the Civil War. Many of these are online. You can look them up in the comfort of your own home, on your laptop, phone or computer, and others are available in hard copy books in the library and elsewhere. And we're going to be going through a wide variety today. You can use these for many different reasons. Maybe if you have family, relatives that you're looking to find out about what were they involved in during the revolutionary period, or even if you're just looking to find out about a particular event that happened locally. We're going to be covering all that in today's talk. So when we're discussing resources for the revolutionary period, I usually divide them into two separate categories, those which are available online and those which are available offline. Offline resources are ones that aren't available on the internet, and they're usually come in the format of books, journal articles, sometimes newspapers. You can get these sources in your library or your county archives, and the second category is online. So for online resources, the primary website which I would usually send people to is the military archives, and you can see the address here is up on the top left of the screen, and this is the front page of the website. And this is basically the official place of deposits for records of the Defence Forces Department, the Department of Defence, and the Army Pension Board since 1990. And they hold an array of documentary resources relating to the revolutionary period, many of which are now digitized and available online to view. And the first of these we're going to be discussing in the military archives is the Bureau of Military History Witness Statements. Now this collection comprises an astonishing 1,773 witness statements collected in the 1940s and 50s from individuals directly involved in the revolutionary period. So they are a valuable primary resource. And this includes the 1916 Rising and the Irish War of Independence that were covered. Unfortunately, due to the sensitivity surrounding the Civil War at the time, statements relating to that period can be scant. There are, however, exceptions to this, with the primary example for County Wexford being the statement of Francis Carty, who covers in detail his experiences during the period. Other instances, you might only get a couple of paragraphs or literally only a couple of sentences. But how do we search the witness statements? So if you go onto the website, you go browse and search our collections. On the left hand side of the screen here, you'll see all those which are available online. And if we click the third one down, Bureau of Military History, and from here there's two ways in which you can search. So the first way would be the index of witnesses. So this is where you have the list of all of the witnesses that gave statements to the Bureau in the 1940s and 50s. These are listed alphabetically, but you can break this down further. So there's a search bar on the right hand side of the screen here, and if I type in Wexford, for example, I'll get all of those which are related to County Wexford. You can see there's 10 entries in the first go, and there's at least 5, so there's at least 50 witness statements here relating to the county, or have it as the subject matter. So it's listed here as the surname of the individual, first name, their identity, which usually their rank or position they held, and each witness statement has a unique number. If you click on this, you can download that statement as a PDF. Now, this is a very good way to search, but if you're trying to look for a specific area, for example, like if you're trying to find out what happened in your local area at the time, it would take you a long time to go through all of these. So this is where the next part comes in handy. So if you go to search here on the left hand side of the screen, you can actually search all of these witness statements by word. And this is a fantastic resource because what it does is the word that you type in, the system checks through all of the witness statements that are available online for that word, and it gives you back each individual reference. So for example here, if I was to type in Dublin, go search, it will tell me that Dublin is mentioned a total of 1,529 times in the witness statements, and this can be several times in the one statement. So, for example, here it gives me the first one is one of a Simon Donnelly, and it references the page in which Dublin is mentioned. So it's mentioned in page 6, page 8, 16, and so on, so on, so on. So, for example, if we're looking for somewhere in County Wexford, so say if you are from Gorey and you're wanting to see what was happening there during the period, the revolutionary period, 1916 or War of Independence, you can type in Gorey, go to search, and there's a total of 54 for Gorey. So we have the witness statement of James Gleeson. He's the times he mentions Gorey there. And you have to be conscious that sometimes this could be only a passing comment, or they could be discussing the topic, a topic that happened in Gorey. You have to kind of tease these out. So, for example, here he talks about in Gorey to launch the volunteer movement. As far as I can remember, the meeting was held in the first week of January. So you can see there, just from reading that, he'd probably talk about the establishment of the volunteers in Gorey town. So, for example, you can look up, it's very useful, say, if you were to look up individuals as well, you can type in an individual's name, or maybe an area that's lesser known from the period. So, say, for example, if I wanted to look up Camolan during the revolutionary period, so I type in Camolan, I'll search, and there's at least 20 mentions of that. So, if I go in, see the witness statement of Patrick Carton, I'll just pick a page at random here now, page 6, and I click on that. That will take me directly to page 6 of his witness statement. And we can see Camolan would be mentioned somewhere here then along this page, or if it's not directly on this page, it'll either be the one above, before, or after it. So you can see it's a very useful resource, very easy to use, and it really is a wealth of knowledge. But I would always suggest, you have to be conscious of these witness statements, that they were taken several decades after the events that took place. So a lot of time has elapsed, maybe that affects people's memory, and also as well that you're taking the resource from a single individual. So it's like when you're undertaking any resource, it's always good to contrast and compare these. So a lot of the time, what I would do, for example, if I was looking at a certain subject or incident, I would reference the witness statement with maybe a local newspaper, or even with another witness statement. So that's just a piece of advice which helps make sure that your information or the research you're undertaking is that little bit more accurate. So staying with the military archives for the moment, the next resource they have available online we're going to be talking about is the Brigade activity reports, and these are comprising they comprise lists of activities and operations undertaken by the IRA during the independence struggle, so from 1916, War of Independence, and up to the Civil War, and they were originally compiled to aid in the administration of the military pensions. And the file organisation is based upon the various brigade areas that existed in the country. So, for example, in the case of County Wexford, what is of interest is the North Wexford Brigade and the South Wexford Brigade, because the county was divided into two brigades during the period. And each file contains information regarding activities and operations relevant to the brigade area, as well as the names of those persons involved in the operations. These are available to view and download online, and some of the information they contain includes the activities of the county's flying columns, ambushes, attacks on barracks, and they can be particularly of interest for discovering what occurred within a local area, as they cover all range of incidents, big and small, including those of local IRA companies. So there's a couple of ways in which you can search these. The main way in which I think is the most useful is if you go on to browse and search our collections. If you go into military service pension collections. Now from here you can click on to brigade activity reports, and this is a section which the military archives have set up themselves, and what they've done is they've taken the information from these brigade activity reports, and they've kind of divided into separate sections. So here they have a list of operations for each county based off the reports. They have maps. Some of these contain fantastic plans and sketches which detail, different operations, ambushes, etc., etc. But the way I generally tend to do it is if you keep scrolling down and go to search and collection, click on it again, and you'll be brought to this section here where you can click on the category what we're looking for. So we're looking for organization and membership files, file series, brigade activity reports, and in relation, say, for County Wexford, just click on Wexford and we'll go search, and of course it brings up those relevant to Wexford, which in our case are in the North Wexford Brigade and the South Wexford Brigade. Now, in the instances of both brigade activity reports, in the case of North and South County Wexford, there's two separate files, but they're both from the same. They're both relating to South Wexford. So two relating to South Wexford and two relating to North Wexford. So if I click on the one for North Wexford here, it gives me basically a summary or of the content which it covers. So here it says related to County Wexford, it talks about 1916, and as well as a list of activities, you also get correspondence back and forth between the brigade activity committees that were set up as part to compile these reports, and those dealing with the pensions. So you'll often come across arguments, conflicts where they're saying they're trying for a particular person might be looking for a pension, for example, or there is basically it's a lot of going back and forth discussion, toing and froing, and it makes for really good reading for the period. So what I did just there for a brief moment was that I actually opened up a file that I had downloaded previously, because these are actually quite large files, so they can take several minutes to download. So rather than have you waiting for that time, I'm going to show you one here that I downloaded earlier. So this is for the North Wexford Brigade, and this is the activity report for North Wexford. So you can see here there's a lot of correspondence that I talked about back and forth, asking questions about the various activities. But if we keep on scrolling down, these are all organized differently. The one for South Wexford will look very different regardless of format, and each county will have a different format as well. They often tend to kind of follow or make up their own, but they're generally easy to follow. So here, for example, we have E Company, North Wexford Brigade, and it gives a list of the activities that happened in 1921. So it goes through that in detail. This was the Cranford Company. It talks about the activities and the people that were involved. So we're after just going through the War of Independence. Truce then came, the activities during the Civil War, what it did, and it's really fantastic information because it's really detailed, because it goes down to really the nitty-gritty. So for example, it says here on Monday the 1st of July 16 of them went to Ferns, then called upon for the attack on the barracks and remained there, and it also named the individuals as well. So you see Cranford Bridge is blown up by a J. Doran, P. Doyle, L. Green, and again this is another resource which you can compare with the witness statements to try and make your information as accurate as possible. So if we were to continue on with this, scroll further on down, more correspondence. This is where we're talking about the formatting. You can see Powell Pasty and also in Enniscorthy, they have the activities kind of listed in a different format. Whereas if you were to go then down to other companies, you can see it's very different. So this is the activities of the Ballycarney Company, say for example from 1917. So it gives kind of a summary of what they did. So they weren't very active really up until the start of 1920. List of activities again, and it covers simple activities because a lot of people will think what went on in their local area. They didn't hear of any big ambushes or attacks or raids, but there was a lot of small minor activity in the county, such as trenching of roads, robbing mail trains. So for example, here you have raiding excise office in Gorey, and these are the names of the people that were involved. And what you can do then is, you know that generally that took place in 1920, so you can go then and you can look up the newspapers, and that'll give you even more information. And now you know that those men who were described essentially as strangers in the newspaper are these people right here. And again, you can go on and research them further in the pensions and so on, so on, so on. But if you go to the back of this file here, these are the fantastic maps which they drew in relation to the activities they were describing. So, for example, here, this is a map drawn up by an activity which I'm familiar with, which was an ambush of RAC officers that were actually swimming at I believe it was a disused quarry outside of the Mun. And you can see they have the town drawn here. They have the pool where the police were swimming. They have the positions in which the IRA men took up when they ambushed them, 1, 2, 3. So really, these are useful whether you're from the area or you're not, and you're trying to figure out, because it puts you physically in the areas where these activities took place. And some of these are quite detailed. So in brief, these are quite a large wealth of, quite a large volume of information. Like I said here, for example, here in the North case of the North Wexford Brigade, they've numbered all the major activities that took place. So the burning of Kilmichael, RIC, and the name of the men that were involved in doing that, Castletown Company. And it's just another resource, but the main primary aspect of the Brigade activity reports is that it tells you what was going on really at a local level. So for example, you saw the Ballycarney and the Cranford companies there. The witness statements might not cover these areas, so these will help you fill the gaps, and they're really good for finding out, like I said, what happened on a local level in the county. Okay, so staying with the Military Archives website, the next thing we're going to be discussing is the pension and medals files. Now, in the decades that followed the revolutionary period, pensions were made available to veterans and their dependents, and in recent years, the various applications have been digitized, with the work still ongoing because there's such a large volume of these. Each application contains a unique comprehensive account of a person's activities, together with references from other individuals and personal documents and accounts which are used to verify and support these applications. The origins of the pensions can be traced back to June 1923, when the Oireachtas decided to compensate wounded members of the IRA, National Army and the Irish Volunteers, as well as the Irish Citizen Army, and also dependents of deceased members of these organisations. And various army pension and military service pension acts were passed in the subsequent decades and extended the availability of pensions, such as the inclusion of members of the Connacht Rangers who mutinied in India in 1920. So these are available to search online. And so we're on the military website here. Again, if we go to browse and search all records, and on the left hand side here underneath online collections, you will see military service pension collection. And if we go down here, and you can go to, I usually go to search the collection. Again, click on search the collection. And in the bar opposite select database, you want to make sure that you have pensions and awards files. And you can search then for the relative or person in particular who you're looking to research based on their name, first name. Each person will have a unique reference code. You can also search by gender, date of death. You can see there's a wide variety of different ways in which you can search here. So, for example, say if you're not trying to look up a particular person, but you're trying to look up a particular area, for example. So say if we go to County Wexford, we go to click here, Wexford, search, and then bring up all of the applications in relation to County Wexford. Now, if you click on the application then, so I'll take the one of Finton Burke here, for example, what it'll give you is details such as his name, gender. You could get one or several of these address details, and these are basically the addresses that he had throughout his time from when he served to when the application was made. So you can see he was originally from 15 Rafter Street in Enniscorthy, and obviously he has eventually ended up in New York in the United States. The subject information is the key piece to these applications that basically gives a summary, or rather it summarizes all of the details that are included in the application. So here it goes: file includes material relating to the subject's receipt of a military pension in respect of his service with the Irish Volunteers during the week of the 23rd to the 29th of April 1916 and a subsequent interment until August 1916. And then it goes through the documents that he has included, and also statements from, or rather references supporting his application from mentors Patrick Keegan, Thomas Sinnott, and so on. And it says here that the file also contains material relating to subject's wife and sister. And this summary is kind of, it's very handy because it's unique to each individual person. When they were writing these up, the person would have had to go through all the files, and because often these can contain quite a large amount of paperwork. So for example, if we click on his file here further, you see it's quite a large file, so it's taking quite a long time to load. We can see also here, just going through it again in detail while we're waiting for that to load. It says awarded 2 and 123 out of 200 years service of pension purposes. It gives lists details of his commanding officer, which was Seamus Raffler, the company in which he served in. So even before you go into the actual copies of the file itself, or the paper copy, you get a lot of the information in here. And really, if you're researching multiple people, it can take quite a while if you were to go and look at all of the paper copies. Whereas you get everything you need here, and especially in the subject information bar summarized. So you can see this is still loading, so it's quite a large file again. And again, another important unique aspect of the application is the file reference number. So this is the unique number for his application, and if you're researching multiple people, maybe the details that you would need to go back again and quickly look their application, or the easiest way would be just to type this in the search bar. Okay, so this file here has loaded, and what it is basically, this is what the summaries are made up from, and these are the digitized copies of his actual application. So this is his own handwriting. This is the application that he would have filled in himself. It's said about references from several other individuals. This will be located down here as well. And sometimes the handwriting in these can be quite difficult to read. So again, that's why the summary becomes very handy. And in order for a person, to get an application, they had to provide a comprehensive account of their details. And if you have a relative or there's an individual and you're looking to find out what they were up to during this period, it is often, unless they have their own personal diaries, for example, the pension applications really are the most comprehensive account you will get of their activity, in particular because it is often had to be verified by their commanding officers, or those that were above them, which were still around at the time. And these also contain correspondence back and forth, so the reasons why they maybe might have been denied a pension, why they would have been granted one, as well as that being the summary. Just it gives you the raw documents here, and it's fascinating to look 100 years on, at even the handwriting of this person. Now, just before we leave the military archives behind, it is worthwhile having browsed through the website itself. We're not going to be able to cover everything in this single talk alone, but it is a vast wealth of records that are available both online and offline. If anyone is ever more interested in reading material that is available offline, you can go through the reading room collections, and it has details of the papers from the revolutionary period as a whole. So, for example, the truce liaison and evacuation papers, Civil War captured documents, Civil War internment collections, Army Inquiry Committee documents, and so on, so on. The list goes on. In recent years as well, what they've done is they've made the format of the website very user friendly. So, for example, if I go to online collections here, go browse, search around collections. You can see here everything is listed on the left hand side as we've seen before, but if you go here you can see this is something I would have skipped over before when I would have gone straight to search the collection, but the Brigade activity files are here. Documents are broken down into period, so the Civil War, the War of Independence, and in one very good interactive feature they have is that they have mapped the casualties from these periods. So, for example, if I go to the Civil War, and once it's loaded, I go to the fatalities map. So you can see here on the left hand side of the screen, click on that. And what it gives you is an online interactive map of all of the casualties based off of the pension application files. So if we go to County Wexford, for example, the more we zoom in, we can see in Wexford town there's 18. If we go in closer, then it shows the location of each casualty. So we click on this one at random, gives the details of a man, place of death, the military barracks, Wexford, or Robert Dixon. And if you click on his name, you will get more details there, and you can go directly to his pension file there as well. And there's all the details that we just went through in the previous section. And again, like I said, there's loads more of other online collections available online. We have the Irish Volunteer newspaper, the Collins papers from 1917 to 1922, the Irish Army census records. This is a list of, or a census that was taken of all of the Free State soldiers in November of 1922. So you can go up in that, and you can look at barracks in Enniscorthy, for example, who was stationed there on those dates. So, like I said, it's a wealth of knowledge that you can delve into even deeper, and because it's all online, you can do it from the comfort of your own home. So, following on from the military archives, the next resource we're going to be talking about is available both on and offline, and these are the newspapers. So, in relation to County Wexford, there are several newspapers which really cover the county. The first was the Echo, which was based in Enniscorthy. The next was the Free Press. Then there was also the Enniscorthy Guardian and the New Ross Standard. Now, while national newspapers such as the Irish Times, for example, they'll reference incidents inside in the county. What you'll get in the local newspapers is just that, local news, specific to County Wexford. Often they'll contain notes that will talk about the incidents in the various districts: New Ross, Bunclody, Gorey, Enniscorthy, Wexford. And it's useful then if you want to try and narrow down, say for example, what was going on in those places during a particular time in the revolutionary period. Wexford County Council Library Service have the newspapers I've just mentioned available online, or pardon me, not online, offline to view in the Wexford Town Library. They're available to view on microfilm and also digitally archived as well. And it's hopeful in the next or in the near future that they will also be digitized so that they will be made available online. Until then, there are some newspapers which are available on platforms which require a payment fee for a subscription, but which do allow you to view the local newspapers online from your own phone, tablet, or computer. So the first example I'm going to show here is the British Newspaper Archive. And this contains copies of the Enniscorthy Guardian and the New Ross Standard. So they are two papers of interest with regards to the revolutionary period. So I give you this very easy platform to search. You can browse, but say for example I want to look up a particular incident. So say the 1916 rising in Enniscorthy, for example. So as I type in 1916 rising, and what I get is a list of results with newspapers that have that reference in it. Now I can reduce this further to have newspapers from the period. So if I go to the date, say the date I'm interested in this occasion is 1916. So this is taking a while to load here. So what we'll do is we'll try another example. So say if you want to have a look at a particular barrack that was burned, for example. So let's say Tinter Barracks that was destroyed in 1920 by the local IRA. So if we go Tintern Barrack, I go 1920, and this is the important part here. So it shows me the newspapers here, but if I go to counties, go on more counties, or Wexford, it will give me the newspapers that have referenced this from County Wexford. So you can see here that sometimes it can be a bit cumbersome. It might take a bit of back doing and froing, but here we have details of the burning of barracks, and it says notice of a claim of €2,000 in respect of Rosbercon police are burned, and also notices about the burning of Ballina, Tintern and Ballybrazil police barracks were received. So it's particularly useful that you can search by word, and it's a very useful platform for searching the newspapers, because it could take a long time to trawl through these manually. If you're searching for about a particular individual or event, maybe which you aren't too sure of the date of, and it's good that you can then reference these against other resources. So the other platform where there's the newspapers available online is the Irish Newspaper Archives. Again, very similar to the British Newspaper Archives. So if I type in Wexford, I would get the results that mention that, and down here in the bottom dates. So say if I pick 1920 to 1922, for example, what it'll do is it'll give me the newspapers that mention Wexford during those periods. So this is very good because it contains a lot of national newspapers. The Irish Independent, here's mention of ambush, exchange of shots in Wexford, and it has some newspapers that the British Newspaper Archives doesn't have. Um, of the two, though, with regards to Wexford newspapers, the British Newspaper Archive is probably the best because it contains the Neuro Standard and the Enniscorthy Guardian, and to my knowledge, it's the only one online that has the date. Like I said, you can browse by region, place, country, date, and you can filter the results down even further if you wish then. So with regards to local newspapers, um, they really are a good primary source for events that was going on locally. And what you'll notice with different newspapers is you'll get different details. For example, the Free Press newspaper I found is very, very good on small, minute details. You could look up a single event from that and another newspaper, and while you get the same story, you will get different perspectives and often different angles or different bits of information. So again, like I said before, when you're looking at these resources, it's always good to go with more than one of them. Another online platform which you can use, which requires a subscription, but is genealogy websites. So there are many of these. One example which I'll show here is Find My Past. And what it sort of does is it takes all of the records that we've talked about so far. So for example, those in the military archive, often newspapers as well as other documents which aren't available really elsewhere online. For example, lists and details of RIC men, court inquiry documents, and it brings them into kind of one-stop shop for looking for information on individuals. But you can also browse these records separately as well. So, for example, this is Find My Past, and we go here to records relating to Ireland. I go all records sets, and you can search here by many different means. So if we go to Ireland, for example, we go kind of from the date during the revolutionary period. So say 1916 to 19, we'll just go 1924. And you can see some of the records which are available. So British Army service records for men that would have served in World War One. A lot of people that were involved in the revolutionary period were involved in World War One, and then also the two of them go hand in hand. Irish deaths and burials. This can be particularly useful when you're wanting to research maybe about casualties. Irish prison registers. So, for example, many people were interned, imprisoned, jailed during this period. So, these are priceless records for anything to do with that subject. The Royal Irish Constabulary Service records. There's a total of nearly 500,000 of these. Particularly useful if you're looking to find out about maybe a family member or an individual that served in the RIC during this period. So we're just going to this, for example. There's many different ways you can search, but I'll just pick a date, for example, so 1921. You can see here gives the details of various different officers. So auxiliary division, these were not to be confused with the Black and Tans, but these were a force that was brought in during the Irish War of Independence to help supplement the RIC and acted separately and was made up of trained British officers. And they were sort of like an elite special force during the Irish War of Independence period. So we just click on this record, for example. It gives you an option to show the actual image of the document itself or just a view transcript. So we'll just go to transcript here. and it gives a bit of detail. Some of these are incomplete, others are more complete than others. If we go back, we can look at other examples. So Easter Rising and Ireland or martial law. So we can look at these. If I type in Wexford. So here we have like the war diaries, for example, from an individual called Patrick Atkins, daily raid reports, Michael Brooks, internment camp and prisons. And like I said, you could trawl through these for hours and hours. But it's particularly useful for if you're looking to do research on an individual. And I've looked up cases before, for example, of casualties, and you can source the military inquiries from these. So it gives you actual copies of the transcripts from these inquiries, the raw actual data as it was 100 years ago, and it's very useful. And again, like anything, I would recommend always comparing these and contrasting them with other resources to help give you best a comprehensive account of the incident or person that you're trying to research. So all of the resources we've looked at so far have been based off historical documents, but in more recent years there's been different approaches to researching the Revolutionary period. And one of these is an archaeological approach. Now, an archaeological approach focuses on the physical elements of the Revolutionary period. So the first example here I have is a website called Documenting and Recording Wexford's War of Independence 1919 to 1921, and it has the title Conflict Archaeology here at the bottom. And this is my own website which I've been working on for the last several years, and what I've done here is I've broken down the various incidents undertaken by the IRA during the period into different categories. So for example, here we have attack on barracks, disruption to bridges and roads, casualties, and an article has been created for each incident, but which focuses primarily on the archaeological remains. So for example, if we were to look at big houses destroyed, we can see two examples here in County Wexford, Ardmine House, and here's an image of how it would have looked, and it discusses what are the physical remains of it. And here, for example, is Ballyrankin House. So here's a classical example of the physical remains or the archaeology from the Revolutionary period. So here we have an example of what Ballyrankin House would have liked prior to its destruction, and this is an example of the remains as it looks today. And another element of this is the mapping of these incidents throughout the county. So we'll have a look at that here. If you just click on Mapping Wexford's War of Independence, click on the link, and what you're led to here is a Google Maps record where all of these symbols represent an individual incident that took place in the county during the War of Independence, and these have been separated based on the category. So for example, if you click here on the left, you can turn these on and off. So if we were to look at barracks burned and sabotaged, there was a total of 24 or more of these vacated RSC barracks that were burned or sabotaged during the War of Independence by the IRA. And it's very useful for if you're wanting, because it gives you a map that lets you focuses on what was going on in your area. So say for example, if you live now along the eastern side of the county around Ballygarrett, or say you can look at an example here at Comolan, Ballycanoe, barracks destroyed in Cortown, Hollyfort. What you do is if you click on the symbol, give you the name of the barracks that was burned and also a link to the article for that. And here is a article on the destruction of the barracks, focusing on the archaeology. So here we have an image of the barracks when it was burned and torched. This was taken the day after. It was from the Freeman's Journal. This is how it looks today. So again, you're talking about these physical remains. This is something that probably many people pass by every day and probably don't realize that it's associated with the War of Independence. And if we go back into the map, we have other examples. So Coast Guard stations, tax and RSC barracks. So if we go to a tax and RSC barracks, you can see there was quite a few. We can look at an example here in Ferns. Again, click on the link. And it talks about the events, talks about the barracks itself. Ferns is an interesting example because there is no one surviving foe that takes in the entire building. So what you do is what I've done is I've used various different resources and photographs to try and paint a picture of what the barracks would look like. And here we're able to use older maps from the early 1900s to give us an idea of the streetscape at the time. So it's a mix of all these various different resources to try and help us understand the archaeology of the period. Now another website which focuses on the Civil War is the Archaeology of Conflict. This has been a research project undertaken by archaeologists Colin Moriarty and Catherine McLaughlin. And you can see here they have divided the various incidents into different categories. So for example, if you click on Wexford Civil War, destruction of the bridges, they've identified over 60 different bridges that were destroyed during the period in the county. And again, to give details of these, you can see from the top here then there's different categories: war on the railways, destruction of big houses, and so on. So another online resource which focuses particularly in County Wexford is the County Archive. So this is the depository for all documentary resources relating to the county's history. And in the last few years, they've undertaken several projects with regards to the revolutionary period, and they house many documents relating to County Wexford. So, for example, if we go into collections, decade of centenaries, you can see several projects which are recently published. So here we have the training order book from a Richard Hanrahan, who was adjutant of A Company. And if you click on this, to give you details of the scope and content, then you can go and actually look at the digital copy of the actual diary itself. As you can see, it's quite a large document, so it may take a minute to load. You can see here it's a fantastic clear copy of the diary. This is a first-hand primary resource which is available online, so you can look at this again from the comfort of your own home, whether it be on your phone, tablet, or laptop. There has also been several exhibitions in the last few years. So for example, the War of Independence in County Wexford exhibition. There's another one on the 1920 local elections. If we click on the one regarding to Wexford and the War of Independence, this has been put together by the archive staff and Grania Doran, the county archivist, and it gives a taste of some of the resources that are available from that period in the county archive. So again, here we have a fantastic image of a man by the name of Seamus O'Brien, a bit of detail on him as well. A portion of a cloth from a billiard table in the National Forest Hall in Court Street in Enniscorthy that was raided in 1920 by members of the Devonshire Regiment. So this was put together during COVID, when unfortunately we weren't able to meet each other in person, so this was produced to do the next best thing, while also holding documentary evidence. It also has several artifacts from the period. You can see here a revolver, Lee Enfield rifle, Thompson machine gun. It has photographs. So this is an image of Sean Moran, who's from Church Street in Enniscorthy, where he was killed during the War of Independence. Letters and transcripts, badges, images. You can see there's quite a rich array of information. And while we're talking about resources for the Revolutionary period, it's also important to note that if you're watching this video and you think you might have something from that period, whether it be a medal, for example, or a letter written by an uncle or grand uncle or family member, or even just someone that you know that you now have in your possession, it can be donated or given to the county archive for safekeeping, where it will be preserved and digitized for future generations to look at as well. Now, another online research which has been made available in recent years is relating to the 1916 period in Enniscorthy, or in the county indeed. So if we could type in 1916 Enniscorthy here, you can see the website Enniscorthy1916.ie. This was produced by Wexford County Council as part of the centenary commemorations, and it is a good resource for anything relating to the Easter Rising in the county. So here is an example. We have a calendar of events. These are events that previously took place to commemorate it, but also resources for research. There's a link to the newspapers of the day. So for example, you can click on here, the People, 6th of May 1916, and they have a copy of the newspapers from that time. People and places. This is very useful for looking at some of the primary resources, or pardon me, the primary individuals involved in the 1916 Rising. So for example, we'll look at Seamus Rafter. We have a summary of his involvement. Pick another one, Una Brennan, coming them on. And it gives a nice brief summary of her activities during the period. And also there is a video produced on that as well, on the history of the 1916 Rising as well. So this is a very good resource for anything to do with 1916 in the county. So moving on to some of the offline resources that are available. With regards to literature, there are several books which are worthy of mention, but which of course is not the full extent of literature available on the Revolutionary period in the county. If you could have a talk alone on many of these, so I just have 4 examples here on the screen. The first you can see on the left is County Wexford Civil War, and this was written by Seamus McSoon, and it covers in detail many of the incidents and operations and activities that took place in the county, from ambushes, raids, shootings, etc. During the Civil War. And his primary resource for when he wrote this was the Free Press, and really it's the only comprehensive account of Wexford during the Civil War currently available. Next to that, we have Enniscorthy, The Forgotten Republic, written by Pat Dorn. And he's done fantastic work here in compiling a list of every man and woman that was involved in the rising in County Wexford, and he provides a summary of their activities. So it's a very useful, quick go-to resource if you're doing any research on any individuals. Next, we have another example of a publication that focuses on an individual. So this is Seamus Rafter, The Life and Times, and this focuses, as it suggests, on the life of Seamus Rafter, who was a prominent leader in the 1916 Rising in Wexford. And the last image we have here on the right is Rebellion in the Schoolhouse, the 1916 Rising in Ferns, written by a local historian, Christopher Power, and this was produced by the Ferns 1916 commemorative committee as part of the 1916 commemorations, and it covers his images and text relating to the rising in Ferns during that year. And this is just a sample of what is available out there, but I would highly recommend people to visit the reference section in their local library, where you can get these and other numerous publications on the Revolutionary period. Now, one final resource we're going to look at here, folks, is the Decade of Centenaries plan for County Wexford. And this is on the wexfordcoco.ie website. You can see the address in the bar up here, Libraries Decade of Centenaries plan, and this is for 2022. And it goes through basically what the council have planned and set out for the year and in previous years. And it allows you to keep up to date with what's ongoing and what has previously just gone past as well. So here, for example, we have seen the talks which have been available online. Here we have podcasts, social history project, engagement with children and young people, the schools programme, County Wexford War of Independence and Civil War and Educational Resource. This was recently released back earlier on this year to provide school children with an overview of the county during those periods, but it's a fantastic resource even just for anyone who has a bit of an interest in County Wexford, because it gives a summary of Wexford in the War of Independence and the Civil War, and it's available free to download here. Another example of activities that have been going on is the Public Digitalisation Project. These were held this year in Wexford and Gorey, and the plans are to make public an archive and exhibition of these in the future. If we look at examples from the previous year as well then, so back in 2021 there was a History Ireland Head School podcast released relating to Wexford in the Revolutionary period. Examples of previous talks, one fantastic here by Aaron O'Wanig on the County Wexford Civil War Data Statistical Survey. And of course you can also go on to the library YouTube page, which has numerous talks which I have given myself on various different aspects of the Revolutionary period in County Wexford. Some of these are listed here, for example. So we have one on the general election of 1922. There was one on the outbreak of Civil War. We released another one then on women in the Revolutionary period in County Wexford. So all of these are available on this website here, and also if you visit the library YouTube page, you can watch this and other numerous videos relating to research from the Revolutionary period. Now folks, that is the end of the talk regarding resources in the Revolutionary period for County Wexford. I hope you have enjoyed this very much, I hope it has given you an overview of some of the multiple resources that are available both online and offline, and more specifically within your local library service. So I would recommend that if there's anything maybe here that you felt it wasn't covered, or you want more information on or questions on, you can contact any of the branches of the library service in New Ross, Wexford Town, Gorey, Bunclody and Enniscorthy. And there is a link at the end of this talk to all of the online resources which were mentioned previously. So I hope you enjoyed this talk very much, folks, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.